This week on Rockstar Superhero. There is nothing traditional about GridFailure, but it's still the greatest new thing I've heard in a while. Forget the idea of songs. This is where chaos, tragedy, happiness, joy, and somehow insanity all meet in a place built for the listener. A place to escape the day-to-day aspect of living a so-called normal life. GridFailure made up of David Brenner and Mac Gollehon. When they're not creating nightmarish soundscapes, Dave runs Earsplit Promotions and Mac Gollehon plays a variety of brass instruments for the world's most famous bands. I'm sure you've tripped across these guys in your sonic experiences. It was my honor and intense joy to host them on my show. It's music like this that catapults me to a new place, and I am so grateful they have allowed me to slingshot them all the further into the ionosphere, and to you, my Rockstar Superhero listeners. I know you'll enjoy my chat with two of the most incredible men I've ever had the chance to connect with. This is the cinematic monstrosity, GridFailure, on the Rockstar Superhero podcast.
When I came here, it was really the height of the disco era. And I didn't come here for that reason at all, of course. I came here to play with all the downtown guys and the jazz stuff. And I was looking to be mainly a jazz guy at that time. And as it turned out, I just accidentally started working on one disco record after another, after another, after another. And then R&B records. And before you knew it, without even planning it or even wanting to do it, I had a career as a studio session player. Yeah, so I did that, and then I left for there was a friend of mine got so intimidated about me doing that because I was taking a lot of work away from a lot of people. So he got me on the road with Buddy Rich for the summer in 78 or 79, I can't remember which. So he got me out of town for a minute just to try to get me out of the circulation, but nevertheless, it had a life of its own by then.
Yeah, and you got yelled at for 3 years, which was awesome.
Yeah.
I have a good friend who played with Barry Manilow back in the late 70s, and his experience was kind of. I saw Buddy once, and I might have even seen you. You could have been there, but all that being said, when Tom played with Barry. It was just the same thing. He was just a quiet version of Buddy, right?
Mm-hmm.
He would turn around and look at you if you missed a note, and it'd be like, "Look, dude, I'm going to fire your ass if you don't.
Right.
You got to be perfect, or you have no play with me."
Well, the band, as a result, the band was always great, and same with Barry. The performances were always great, and with that in mind, I mean, they really demanded a certain amount from you, and they deserved it. They definitely wanted a certain level all the time because they were giving it too. I mean, he was throwing out 100% every night. So he was really his 100% was for him was 80%. It was so relaxed, but that was a lesson in itself too.
Yeah, it's interesting. While we're waiting for our buddy here, did you ever have a chance to play with Prince?
No, but I do have a very funny story for you about it, though. At the time, I was with Duran, and we were playing a huge soccer stadium. It was on the Strange Behavior Tour, I think it was, and 1987 or 88, somewhere around there. And basically what he said, Prince came out, and he saw the show. It was like a big soccer stadium, about 160,000 people. And the manager for Prince came up to me and said, "Yeah, Prince would like to meet you." I said, cool. So then the other guys were lined up. They were, "Oh yeah, we're going to go meet Prince." So no, he just wants to meet the trumpet player. So as that worked out, I went to this room. It was called an anti-doping room because it was in a sports arena, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's where they check the guys out if they're on steroids or all kinds of sports-inducing, enhancing stuff, So I waited there for quite a long time, maybe 15, 20 minutes. And then finally the guy came in and said, "Okay, Prince is going to come in to see you now." So I said, great. And I'm looking forward to it, right? Prince walks in. He takes one look at me. And then he waves his hand at the guy like almost like a thumbs down thing and just walks out.
Oh my God. That is badass.
That was my only encounter with Prince. No, I never played with Prince, but I guess it must have come close. I guess he liked what he heard on stage, but I heard later on that he wanted people to have a certain look. You know, at that time everybody had to be very short or thin, very thin, very short. And that time I was more like a muscle mag kind of guy, you know.
Yeah.
And it didn't really fit what he was looking for, I suppose. Who knows? I mean, we'll never know, right?
Who knows? No. Hey, David, welcome to the show, buddy. How are you?
David.
Hey, great. Sorry I'm late. I was sitting out there. It said, let's check your camera. I was staring at it, and I didn't see it said enter studio. So I was just sitting outside the backstage for 2 minutes. But all good. How's everybody?
We're good.
Yeah.
Mac and I were talking about, different influences, different people. And he was talking about a little bit about Barry Manilow and how these people expected a certain sort of, well, obviously expectation of quality and ability, right? But it made me think about how Prince used to say all the time, the most important thing about my band is everybody's got to learn how to step on the stage and slow down. Everybody has to understand how to operate at 50%.
Right.
And I thought that's a really fascinating way to think about it, because even if I'm a drummer, for example, and even if you sat me down with a click track, and I'm going to be fine following a click, it's no problem. But if you sit me down and say, okay, we're going to start with Let's Go Crazy, and the song is at, 100 beats a minute, I can listen to that click, but if I'm not in the moment, if I'm not in my zone, that natural adrenaline is going to take me, right. And I love Prince's perspective of everything is 50% slower, and it's just this mental exercise about slowing down. And sure as heck, the groove doesn't exist without that. So it's pretty rad, So look, I'm stoked that you're here. I've been so excited about getting together with you two this week, and I know it's the end of your day, David.
Oh yeah.
It's the end of your week. You're probably fragged.
Oh yeah, always. But whatever. It's it is what it is. What are you gonna do? Like I don't just sit around and stare at the TV too much, no matter what. So as soon as I'm done, with my work, my duties or whatever, then it's working on something in the yard, or it's working on music, or it's art. There's always something going on. It's not a whole lot of just like, even if you're watching TV, I normally have a notebook in front of me and like a big pile of like to-do lists and post-it notes and everything, like serial killer and some like thing into like one cohesive to-do list, which I'll forget to do most. It's just, you got to be constant. I can't just sit and stare too much. So it's, got to stay busy.
No. Well, I'm so grateful for this, because I'm fortunate to have a relationship with you. You sent me some fantastic music over the past couple of months, some bands that have actually changed my life, some different style, things I'd never comprehended or expected.
And it's only been a few weeks.
it has. But you know what I love about this is you've touched. You've hit a zone with me, sort of this music spirituality thing, right? This thing that happens between the lines that you only connect with a few people. This isn't common, right? Like how many people have heard, Dismemberment Cabaret, which is, the new thing, the new album. How many people have heard it and said, oh, this is the greatest thing ever?
I don't know. You see them all coming up. We've had a few pretty good reviews. It's that thing where if you get it, you totally get it. And even if you don't really know if you like it, you have a lot to say about it. You know what I mean? It's definitely not for everybody. GridFailure in general is not. And when we were starting on this record, it was, you've talked to Mac for, a couple minutes now. I got stories like the stuff that he's done. And I'm, like this whole the slowing down process you were just talking about, that was kind of the entire point of GridFailure, because every band I've been in before was like punk, hardcore metal, straight up grindcore, blistering, fast stuff, like triple mega riffing, just everything. And this whole thing was to do that, like you said, at like this apocalyptic quagmire sort of pace. It was like learning how to have restraint in everything and leave the restraint, not even give it that hook that gives you that finish net. Oh yeah, at the end you're supposed to be like,
yeah,
now what,
yeah. No, it's interesting because even listening to you talk, you remind me. I have a friend who runs a major company there in New York, and I don't want to name it right now just because I don't want to name it. But long story short is this: anytime I ever hang out with this guy, and he's awesome, and I love him to death, I can't stand to hang out with him because he's so like jammed up, full of like negative energy from the city. It's like the city has infiltrated him, right? And what I love about you is you've got this whole week, you've carried it to this moment, and I'm here to help you decompress, man. I'm here to help and hang with you, and Mac and we're just gonna make this a great time.
All right.
Right.
I didn't bring any tables to body slam or anything. I'm in the jam room here, but
Well,
I'll find something to smash.
Yeah. No, well, let me say this because I think this is a fair way to start. When you sent me Dismemberment Cabaret, I listened to it. I listened to the whole thing, and I sat. So what I did is I listened to a few bits and pieces of it early in the day, and then in the evening, I have this old habit that I've done since 1985. Back in 1985, a friend of mine introduced me to Jean-Michel Jarre. And he had an album that came out called Zuluk, which was this sort of spacey, it was like Star Wars meets Laurie Anderson. It was completely out there, right? And my friend Dave at the time said, "Hey, Rob, I want you to sit on the couch and I want you to put on headphones. I'm going to give you a glass of wine and you're going to sit here in the dark and you're going to listen to this album." So what I did the night you gave me that record is I went and sat down and I did the same thing. It's the first time since 1986 that I've done this. And I will tell you, it hit me the same way. In fact, I have a 10-year-old daughter and I played her a little bit of it. And she looked at me with this distressed face and like, "Why do you want me to hear this?" And I said, "Honey," and she loves Zuluk, the album, as well, because I'm doing that to her, right? I want her to be able to hear things that challenge her, that, when she sits down and draws, she imagines where the music is taking her, right? And I just wanted to start with a general statement. You've written this violent, moody, trippy, schizophrenic, heartfelt, complete piece. It's all the things all at once. And I love it. And that's my statement, and I'm sticking to it.
I'm not going to argue. Thank you very much. It's, we were saying from the beginning, like, I never really have any kind of expectations coming into anything because of the extreme nature and just the weird, just the entire weird aura of what GridFailure is in general, and the kind of unplanned, unpredictable nature of it. So we know it's not for everybody, but it's like you said, it's that's why it was going to be so fun working with Mac, because while he's played on, I don't know, 800 million gold and platinum pop, rock, jazz, mainstream records, anything you hear, half the stuff on the radio he's on, you know what I mean? It's like, he's not confined to that world by any means. He wants to always like look deeper and branch out and go weirder and take it in these other ways. So it was just this completely we had no charted course for this. We just kind of started doing stuff in quarantine, like he'd been out here and recorded a few times, and we had talked about doing something a little more intense, and it just never, we had been talking about it more and more, and then pandemic hit, and we're definitely not going to get together and hang out in the garage blowing into horns and screaming and, whatever. We were going, I haven't seen my family in a year and a half. So it's, we weren't going to hang out like that. It was so like, how do we do this? Knowing this guy's recorded in every studio on the planet. Like, I know he was out here and we did some setups with just like standard mics and everything, but I was like, how's this going to work? So very early in the pandemic, Mac was just out in the hallway of his apartment building in Staten Island, and he would he was doing exercises, running up and down the stairs, and just trying to keep this positive kind of vibe going, and playing. So he would just play these beautiful and kind of upbeat notes, and we were watching tens of thousands of people dying, and and it was just the weirdest thing. And just, flip through Instagram and there's Mac, like, playing in his building. And I'm like, this sounds killer. It's like, this is what, when you saw, people cheering for the healthcare workers coming home from the hospital and stuff like that. It was one of those sort of things. Like, he's playing for this building of like artists and stuff where he lives, kind of just tooting and, just to add some music. And I was like, let's just do that. That sounded great. Just record that on your phone and send it to me and I'll start working and we'll just see, what happens. Yeah. And that's really it. We started out with hey, let's make it sound like, Dragnet and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You know what I mean? Right. It's just like, that's how it evolved,
Yeah. Oh man. So Mac, tell me, if you will, how did you meet David the first time? How did you guys connect?
Well, met through a mutual friend who introduced us, and I stated to him that I was interested in pursuing some other directions in music, and I was getting a little bit tired of some of the things that I was involved in and wanted to try something really different and get with some people who were doing some different things. And that's right away who he hooked us up. And it just kind of transpired from there. And when we really discussed doing it, we did a couple of things at Dave's house, some recording. But what we really took a direction after that, because as a result of that, we took a directionless direction in this. And as you said, playing in the hallway, and it just took off from there. So in a way, the direction is what transpired as a result. It wasn't like anything planned so much as it was something that was like altered and refit as it went. And at one point I said, look, I don't care about mass appeal of this thing. I don't care where it goes as far as that. I have no commercial aspect of this thing going whatsoever. Doesn't interest me whatsoever. I'm just interested in maybe the 10% of the 1% who are even into this to start with.
Yeah.
And let's just make some really killer music, and let's make something that nobody else is doing. And then no one else is doing it, and they, definitely not doing it. So it's got a different direction to it as a result. And it's not the kind of thing where people are going to sit down and have dinner and, okay, let's put on some background fodder here. And, it's really strictly a destination thing.
Gnawing on a human limb,
Yeah, right. So, it's not the kind of thing where you'll listen to it and say, like you go to some of these jazz clubs now or something, after it's over, people come out and they say, well, what'd you think of the music? Well, it was pretty good. Let's go get something to eat.
Right.
No, they're not going to come out like that. They're going to say, oh man, that shit was whack. That was crazy. Yeah. Or they're going to say, wow, that was really different. I think I need to check that out again, or I need to look into this a little further.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always hesitant to ask the influence question. I say this to every artist I ever talk to as well. But, when I listen to something like this, my brain really doesn't have a lot of places to go, right? There's nothing to me, with the exception of some of the Japanese noise core, that, I had mentioned to David through an email. It's like, look, I know about Endon. You know what I mean? I know a couple of these super intense, screamy bands. This is very dangerous and violent, almost like a biker gang as music, But what influences you, or what inspires you? One, David, what inspires you to write stuff like this? And two, what inspires you, Mac, to be a part of something like this when, granted, you don't have anything to lose now, but at the same token, you know what I mean? It's so wildly different.
I don't really go into GridFailure with any kind of set influences. Like I said before, most of the bands I was in before, it was 4 or 5 people all writing, taking turn songwriting and whatever. And then I was not in any active band for 10 years or more.
Yeah.
I moved up to New York, and that's when I was pretty much just doing Earsplit all the time. So we hung out with a billion kinds of bands and everything else. I just during that time of not playing, I wasn't playing bass anymore. I wasn't singing anymore. There was just nothing going on. And when I started getting back into playing bass a few years back, I joined this dark ambient band, Theologian, right out my way in New York, and joined that it ended up only being a year and not ending very well at all. But it's a dark ambient, like harsh electronic post-industrial band, and it's we ended up like that was the first time I'd ever been in a band that was playing shows with like kind of like goth dance bands and solo acts and power electronics, just tables full of pedals, and you know what I mean? It was just a totally different thing than the punk and the hardcore and the metal and everything else I'd played. And so just going into that, like, oh, I don't need an instrument, I just need pedals and figure this shit out kind of thing. It was like a totally new thing for me. And it was very cool, but I didn't really know what I was doing within that act because it was this other person's brainchild, and I was just this whatever. Anyway, like I said, didn't end well, and I just kind of from that stuff had just made my first record, and I was like, okay, well now I have this defined thing, I have a name, and I've got a record, and I've already got other material, so just keep going. Like, and it was that slow morph. Like, how do we keep making this nightmare prolong? Let's see if I can make another record. Let's see if I can make another record. And now with like the live sets and everything else that we put out, like the improv sets and everything else, I have like 25 records on Bandcamp in like 5 years. You know, it's I just go and go and go. So it's like you want to like, okay, let's throw jazz in here. Let's throw folk music in here. Let's throw whatever in here. It's like, 'cause I listen to so much, I listen to like more hip hop than metal these days, even though we do Earsplit all day and work with mostly metal and extreme bands and everything. I'm normally listening to ambient stuff and jazz, and like, Mac's trying to run as fast as he can away from the pretentiousness of the jazz scene he's been in so long. And I'm like, that's what I want to run right at, I'm just like, let's trade, you know what I mean? Like, you come over and play with my pedals, and then we'll go to the jazz club and freak them out, like, let's go. So there's no like, hey, let's make a song that sounds like this or whatever. I make entire records by myself without having a structured plan or whatever, or there'll be a record with 10 or 12 people on it that sent me random submissions that I turned into songs and worked around. It's just kind of like, see what fits what record itself that I'm going for, and then save the rest of it for something else and just keep going that way. So when it was time to work with Mac, it was like, look what he can play, look what he can bring to it. Before you say anything, Mac, it makes sense actually why you're a part of this too, because who wouldn't want to be around David's energy? You know what I mean? It's full on. It's full on. It's like a car crash waiting to happen all day long. I love it, man. It just keeps flipping.
Yeah. And it was inspiring because we would throw things back and forth. And speaking of influences and things that would lead you to certain reference points, that has to take place in pop and jazz, because everybody wants to pigeonhole you so they're comfortable with you. Especially in pop and jazz, and they want to be able to put you in a slot that you belong right in. That way they're comfortable. They can reference you. They can say, okay, this belongs here, this belongs there. And I just got completely sick of that. I made several records that I did the best I could with them, and to try to get them to sound different. Tribute records, tribute to Fats Navarro, this and that. Several people wanted me to do more tribute records, but if I did it, I would get as far away from the tribute person that I was tributing as far as I could away from them. And I'd change it to 11/8 or whatever. I would change the time signature. I would just do everything I could to get away from that. And that's what I was trying to do. I was basically trying to escape the mainstream the whole time, because it's gotten so redundant. It's like everybody sounds the same in those genres. Now you get a certain genre, it's like everything sounds the same. The fashion, the dress, the look, the way they are, the way they talk, the way they act. And I was just sick of it. I wanted to get as far away from that as I possibly could, because I've always wanted to do that. Even when I was playing 3 and 4 record dates a day back in the day, my sound, one reason I got those dates was my sound was totally different than the guys who were doing the record dates from the 60s and 70s. My tone was different. My phrasing was different. I had a bit of a lot of Latin influence. I had a lot of my own influence as far as articulations and different styles. And it wasn't just coming from a big band generic kind of vibe. So I've always been a bit that way myself, wanting to escape just a little bit of everything that's going on and create a bit of myself into it, interject what I can into it, bring forth what I can into the situation. And with David, we were able to run back and forth with that. And then I would sometimes say, okay, let's get crazier with it. Let's do some crazy like 70s cop show horns. And then let's see how that's going to layer over that, because he already had some things laid down. So I would put some things over that, then that would inspire David to do something else. And it just turned into a wild scene, really.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's all the things, man. You know, I listen to you guys talk, and I think about the different influences each of you have had, the things that you are doing to influence others too. And if there's any one truth about this, and I think I recognize it when I listened to it too, David, was even though there's so much noise and chaos, if you're listening, there's control in there. There's a tempo in there. There's a pattern in there. There's something going on in the subtext of that noise that keeps the listener, if they choose to listen, in the middle of it. And I don't think it could happen without the experience both of you have and the radically different lives you've led. Right? I mean, something like this it's not an accident. And there's a reason people like me are drawn to it, because we're not going for the easy fix like Mac was talking about a second ago, where everybody wants you to be theirs, right? I want to own you. Radiohead, please do not ever change because you sound like the Radiohead I want you to sound like. And then in 2000, they fucked it all up and became and did whatever the hell they did. And then Muse comes in and says, hey, we think we'll be the new Radiohead, until they fuck it up. And then somebody else comes in and says, we're going to be the new Radiohead. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you guys, you're basically like, fuck that. I'm just going to be we're just going to be GridFailure.
Yeah.
And
I'm never going to be Radiohead. I'm never going to be something that sells a lot. I play heavy music naturally. I play extreme things. That's just what I'm drawn to. It doesn't mean I wouldn't like to be a great, beautiful, romantic singer, or, be able to, just play, folk music and croon and sing. I can't, I can roar. I can, beat myself senseless for a half hour in the dark. I can, come up with some beats and some riffs and whatever. And that's what it is. It's like, it's a lot of sound design and, just taking a riff you didn't really plan on. How do we make this into kind of this rolling thing that just kind of reappears through the song or goes back down, like earworms and just things that, like it could be on the surface. Like, I don't get offended when people classify GridFailure as noise. That just means they paid attention to the thing long enough to call it anything. They can call it shit. I don't care. You paid attention to it for 6 seconds. Thanks. Yeah. But I think it's like I don't fit in with the noise crowd at all. This isn't like some just wall noise, harsh noise, pedal like thing. It's more of a cinematic apocalypse or something is what I'm trying to go for, more or less. So there can be punk parts, there can be beautiful, female vocals, there can be violins, there can be acoustic guitars. Everything is soaked in storms and fire and wind and all these. I'm always recording in storms or just, capturing random sounds out, found sounds and turning them into things. And it's a lot of just more like art class, put to like a combative tone or something, it's more like a sound collage or something like that than, every now and then there's a riff that has kind of like an actual hook part to it or whatever. And I have some records coming up that are much more, kind of guitar and rock based and like Americana style and everything else, these other directions. And a lot of them have some more structured song types to them and everything else. But a lot of it really just becomes out of whatever it is. And it never really has that release. It just, the tension stays there through the whole record. You can listen to a 40-minute record and there's no release. There's no big breakdown like in hardcore. There's no big epic metal ending. There's no, you know what I mean? You're left in ruins. It's like you're supposed to be left like scratching. What did I hear? What did I do?
So I mean, if I could, because it makes me think of something. It makes me think if Syd Barrett had survived and decided he wanted to step into this new world, this new ambient, noisy, dangerous, right? Challenging. What would he do? How would he tweak sounds? I mean, this totally reminds me of like like early Floyd, Saucer Full of Secrets. Obviously, it's not as melodic. I mean, it's not. It's just not. I mean, Crime Scene Designers has that beat in the background. That I like the first time I heard that, I was like, oh, okay. I see how they're playing with ideas here, right? And they're keeping this sort of theme, if you will, in the background. But that's
got
what
the industrial edge to it, but it's not pumping out like a dance beat. It's just kind of behind whatever else is going on. Like
Floyd would have done that. I mean, Syd Barrett would have done that. So is it unfair to equate you to Syd Barrett? Maybe, but I think, that says a lot. I mean,
it's your
Mac, well, I know, but Mac, I mean, are you vibing with what I'm thinking? Because
we actually called one of the beats, the one you mentioned, Crime Scene Designers. We actually jokingly called it the Plague Beat.
Oh yeah,
a couple of times, and but that's a good name for it. I mean, it evolved because of that, because of the method of recording, whatnot. The influence was definitely there.
No, it's really cool. I use the word rad a lot because I'm like stuck in 1984. But it is rad. It is cool. It is wild, and somehow it's different. Even though, I mean, yes, it's obvious it's different, right? I mean, I know I'm talking in circles right now, but it somehow, for me, reminds me of something I've heard, and I don't know what it is. And don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting it's taken from anything, but it's like a piece of musical deja vu. It takes me somewhere, and I think that's what I love about it so much. And I want to get back on track is. You said it a second ago. It really is about the cinematic flavor. It's about, the feeling of sound as visual stimulation.
Right.
And like it's the perfect music. If you're going to do acid, this is the music to do it to. You're going to have a really you're going to have a really shitty trip.
You're going to end up in front of a train. You're going to be
right. But you're going to have a trip. And,
location.
You know what I mean?
Right. Locations,
helmets.
Right?
But movies inspire me, and it sounds like they inspire you. And given the type of music that you're creating with GridFailure, has the music inspired you to create a film score in advance of maybe being asked to do a film score? I know that's a weird way of going about it, but like I'm in the middle of writing a screenplay right now for honestly a really badass idea, and your music fits like that. You know what I mean? So where do you sit in that space?
I actually did score a short horror movie for a couple guys that work with like Decibel Magazine and have their own independent film ventures and everything else. And I thought it was going to come out a couple years ago, and it still never has. They were going to try to get it out through like the some of the independent festivals and everything else, and I guess it just wasn't getting picked up and everything else. But I signed on for that before I had seen any of what they were making, and it actually turned out to be it's a horror movie. It's a short film, but it's a little more like black comedy, tongue in cheek. It's a little more cynical or snarky or whatever than I was planning when I was putting the material together. And as far as I'm concerned, it's the soundtrack is like 10 times darker than the actual film. You know what I mean? But it fits it. It was like we scored it, worked it directly to it. And that was the first time I'd ever done anything like that. If somebody offered me money to do that all day long, every day, like I would sit and make this stuff for, Twix commercials. Like I would, you know what I mean? If I have no studio knowledge, I have no training. I just figure things out and just pick it up and try to, like anybody else, just try to expand, get a better piece of equipment, get a better understanding of how to do something or whatever, and making my own videos and everything else. I would love nothing more than to put a film together. And I have a lot of ideas besides the videos that I make for a lot of the songs. I actually have a much more in-depth plot that I want to run out for the Teeth Collection record, which it was supposed to be my second record. And now I started a 5-album concept series that's been ongoing. 2 records are out, and there's the 3rd one probably coming at the end of this year. And then Teeth Collection is the 4th in the anthology. And that's going to be this completely cannibalistic, very tribal, woodsy, people covered in mud, sharpening spears, post-apocalyptic, bloodthirsty savagery. It's going to be, and that's where I want to bring people out in the woods and be like, all right, everybody take your clothes off. Everybody get in the fire. Everybody hit each other with a stick. I mean, like, I want to capture this like it's like, you know, like a black and white Braveheart, like filming at night in a storm in the woods or something. I mean, I want it to be, and I wanted to make it, you know, more than just one song. I want to do a more elaborate piece about it, you know, build some sets or something, you know what I mean? And that's going to be quite a challenge at whatever point I embark on that. But the good thing is now, after working with all these people for so long in this project that are involved in it, now there's a wide cast of people who are supportive that play on some of these records and collaborate and end up here a lot. And it's kind of send out a bunch of lines, just blast everybody on email, a couple texts, whatever, and see who's involved, who wants to get in, and, you know, just set it up. So it's, you know, we'll see.
Yeah, no, that's great. You know, Mac, you have been on so many albums, so many influential albums. Is there, you said, let me say it a different way. You've chased towards, David, you know, let's do something different. Let's get out of the, you know, the traditional space. Let's rethink things. Are you getting satisfied with that? Do you feel like you've kind of done everything, or, you know, what kind of stuff are you still chasing?
Well, yeah, I did do, it was an enormous body of work. A lot of numbers, just sheer numbers alone is actually alarming, really, the amount of stuff. Really. It's, and then sometimes I would think, well, did it even matter? Did it even matter? Yeah. And then there's certain things that bring attention to, okay, yeah, it did matter, but did it really matter? A lot of times, as far as an artistic statement, a lot of these things, not that much. Yeah. Not that much. It was a way to make a living. It was a way to go to work. It was a way to get things done. I met a lot of great people along the way, and a lot of people that you'll never ever hear of that were even greater than the ones that were really well known or got famous. Then the ones that did get famous, some of them didn't stay famous for long and didn't live for long. But anyway, the long story of the thing is basically, I've always been searching. So did I ever really totally find the identity that I'm looking for? And that's what the search is. Now, I think the search has gotten narrowed down since around 2010. And I think the search has gotten a bit more concise and a bit more pinpointed about what I'm going for and what I'm doing. And I'm not really concerned anymore at all about what people are going to think about my work or what they're going to think about the sound. I couldn't care less. And it's just strictly trying to make a statement that's in the moment, about the moment. And that's what this is about, what we try to do here. And no longer concerned about what I sound like on a commercial record date, anything like that. If I go there, I'm going to knock it out of the park. And it's going to sound great, and that's going to be that. But it's nothing more than just, that's just nothing more than something that I do to do that day.
Oh man, that's so cool. I assume David hasn't written you any charts. You come in and you just just play what you want to play, basically, right?
Well, there was some structure to it. After a while, we really started narrowing some things down. We started talking about the concepts of consistency of a suite to make this pretty much the evisceration suite in a way. Wow. So then that spurred me on to think of, okay, I want to use a certain organization of 12-tone rows in serial music. So I wrote several serial music rows that actually gave it the cop sound, the 70s cop sound, TV show sound, and it definitely had a sound. And I said, we could put all these together at once, and we can like put any number of them. Mathematically, it will be correct. It will be a structural sound. It will be an identifiable sound. It will be sonically cohesive, and it will hold together the whole album as a suite, just from that perspective of what the horns and the didgeridoo and the different.
We already had so much of the record already written. We had the record, I would say, conceived and recorded about 50% as to where it is now, maybe without the vocals and everything. But we had the direction started, and then Mac brought up this sweet idea that he's talking about, and this repetitive tone. So you'll hear in some of the songs, you'll hear a single trumpet play the one riff, and then the next song you'll hear a trombone play that riff, and it kind of like one or two here and there, but at the end of pieces you hear the whole thing stacked at once, and that's kind of the big crescendo where all of a sudden all these pieces that you've heard kind of repeat but not sound exactly the same the whole way through. Not every song, it's like kind of every other song where we place these. So it's not that we just took the same riff and repeated the record with the same riff or something. You can't do that in rock or whatever, but the way he approached it and the way I just took it in this raw, like, how do we plug it in? Who cares? Scatter it, figure it out, take this over here and just keep Legoing around and then it was like, that just completely knocked it into this other dimension that we hadn't even planned on. And he was true. Like, that's not even how I planned on hearing it, but that's great. I love it. Like,
exactly. Exactly. That's not how I planned to hear it at all, but it was a pleasant
that bad
surprise.
Cop riff that goes through the whole thing. It's everything has this bad cop tone. It's all like the Serpico sound or something. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm. There was a minimal amount of writing, really, very minimal amount of writing, and the reason it sounds conceptually different is because it had the original motif, and then it had the inversion, and then it had the retrograde, and then it had the retrograde inversion. So they mathematically, they're cohesive. They work together. They will work together, and it's a system. However, it comes out sounding very different because of the inversions and retrograde inversions and all of that.
Yeah, it sounds to me, and I'm probably way off, and David's going to correct me here, but it sounds to me like it's just a plethora of organic sounds that have been laid on top of each other. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of stuff in the world today that's sampled, and I don't care if it is or it isn't. I'm just saying, when I listen to this, it doesn't sound like a synthetic piece of music. It sounds natural. And I think that's what's so appealing to me, because I hear all the tonality. I hear the different timbres and how there's these dissonant clashes, but then there's these beautiful sort of symbiotic sort of right passages, things that happen that resolve just for a second to give you ease before they take you back down the hole.
It's not that I don't like, the only thing I don't really like is kind of the electronic term, because like you said, like I don't make any, like I use some drum machines and some kind of programming tools and things like that, but I have, real drums, and everything is guitars and basses, and it's actual instruments for the most part. A ton of pedals, there might be like 40 pedals going all at once on a keyboard part that's hitting one ping over and over, and I might cut and loop things in that way, but it's more like Ministry or something, like in that cut and paste serial killer industrial kind of build up, not like it's not like building a trap beat with with all like onboard computer stuff. I do a lot of all my editing, obviously recording the computer and everything else, but it's basically like some cleaning and mixing and compression and things like that on there. I don't really do a whole ton of After Effects because I'm playing through 15 pedals on two different microphones doing vocals, and I'm doing 4 layers of the vocals. By the time you do that, you don't even need instruments. There's just this whirlwind of tortured voices spiraling in and out of the same line and things like that. So it's more of this pan left, pan right, try this out kind of thing. And yeah, try to give that, anybody who's going to sit down and give this more than 5 minutes and not run away from it and throw it in the garbage and come hit me with a hammer or something, we'll find something that at least like pulls them like a tractor beam somewhere. They might not like it, they might not love it, but it's kind of like when you hear water lapping at the shore or a fire crackling or something, and you kind of just get into that trance-like kind of head or something after a while when you have kind of the same sound earworming out of something, but then there's like this beat that comes out of nowhere, and then I'm playing on a contact mic over here through 6 pedals, and then there's like birds chirping, and then someone comes in with what I mean, it's very scattered, but I want it to be like like we were saying before, more like you just kind of witnessed a movement or a play scene or a cut from a movie
opera,
or
man.
something like that.
It's opera.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. It's just it's
holy shit opera, but it's opera. You know,
that's the next record. That's the next record. Holy shit opera.
There it is. There it is. I want to play on it, by the way. I will play the drums.
There you go. Start laying the tracks.
I will give you free tracks, man. I want to play on this so bad.
Totally shit opera.
I'm serious, actually. I'm throwing it out there right now. I will do it. You know, it's interesting too, because the other day my family, every night when we have dinner, we put something on, we listen to something, and one night it's Ambrosia, you know, it's 1978 Ambrosia, you know, or Bread, right? Something really safe and poppy and sweet. And then the next night it's, you know, Rendezvous Point or some crazy prog rock. But I actually put your stuff on night before last. At dinner, and we're all sitting there, and everybody's eating, everybody's being quiet, and I see my wife making, and nobody, of course, the podcast listeners will not see this, but she's making this face of like, you know, like she's uncomfortable, like somebody's just putting like a needle underneath her fingernail.
Well, we're guaranteed to take everybody out of their comfort zone. Right?
Yeah. And I just wanted to say I was smirking because I'm looking at everybody and they're all kids. You know, I mean, I got my wife and then I have these 3 kids. I have a 10-year-old and 8-year-old twins, and they're all just going like, oh wow. And, you know, they're responding with everything from, like, this is really uncomfortable. Wow, this is really scary. You know, but it was intriguing. And I actually had my boys sit down after dinner with paper and crayons and draw what they heard.
What?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's wild.
My mom used to do that for me, Mac. When I was little, she would play Beethoven or Prokofiev or something, and she would say, draw what you hear. And I would draw like a deer that just got shot, and it's like, you know what I mean? leaned up against a tree. You know, I did. You should ask her. It's true. I should have brought it over to show you, but one of them drew this crazy dark, like, you know what I mean? This crazy dark thing. And the other one drew like a couple of trees. And I was like, where do you get trees out of this? But I guess what I'm trying to say with all of this, and I apologize for talking so much, is it's impossible to classify. I've seen people write, oh, it's, you know, it's noisecore, it's avant-garde, you know, jazz. It isn't. It's grid failure.
Yeah. Well, you know, people are really, they're really hell-bent on having to label something or put it in a proper slot, something they can digest and understand. And we set out with the intent here to make everybody uncomfortable completely with this thing. They have nothing familiar to grab onto. There's nothing, nobody's going to come and rescue you. You're in the water. You're in the quicksand. You know, the buzzers are circulating. If you take time to listen to it, nobody's going to save you. Nobody's going to help you.
And we're showing up with anchors and we're showing up with anvils.
What Mac just said is the next name of the album, David. Nobody's going to save you.
Nobody's going to save you.
That is such a great concept. And I mean, I don't know. There's something about it, you know, when you had mentioned, David, through an email that the last thing you want to do is talk about politics or religion today. And obviously,
I just said if you want to keep it on track with having fun with the record or something.
Yeah, I know. But I actually want to throw something out there because I think this is interesting, is everybody's opinion about anything can be found in the art they create. It really can. I mean, if you listen to your music through a different lens, if you say, okay, let's pretend for a second that Mac and David made this album about the current political situation in the United States, of which I do not want to talk about right now. But when you listen to it, if you listen to it through that lens, holy shit, it sounds like you're pretty fucking pissed off. And that's awesome. And yet questioning everything, if that makes sense.
There is a lot of like there's a surreal nature to it, but of course everything comes from inside somewhere, and there's a lot of duality to things. So there might be something where I'm singing about something in more of like a sense where I have a different personal opinion, or it was inspired by something that doesn't necessarily have to translate through. And I want people to kind of interpret things however they want to take them. Now, I do have some very, you know, outspoken political beliefs and everything, mostly namely about the environment. I mean, that's where the name came from, you know, like I wrote a lot of this stuff before the band even existed, kind of putting together the name and everything else during Superstorm Sandy, when we didn't have, you know, like the whole East Coast was wiped out, and like I had like no power for 8 days in the cold, and you know, it was like we were in the dark with nothing but a couple cans of whatever, and you know, it was, and so yeah, there's a lot of ecological disaster to it. There's a lot of very you know, I've done things like plant trees and do some things like that. So it's not that it's detached from politics in any way, or whatever. This isn't something I want people to sit down and hear a bunch of opinions. Like that's what a punk rock band is for. That's what a hardcore band is for. Like I have that outlet somewhere down the line or whatever. That's not this. This is like, I want anybody who's willing to undergo it, to jump into it, to actually try to discern something out of it. Like it's hard to be offended by what anybody says they got out of it, because that just means they spent time on it. You know, I don't like everybody's art or music or whatever, but if you spend time on it, it was worth at least giving it that shot or whatever. And that's all I can ask for with this. So it's like, you know, it's, if I really wanted to point out people and alienate them, whatever else, I think I would make the lyrics a little more discernible, and you know, it's not like that. I've definitely written political, you know, things during a lot of the political. I mean, GridFailure started in 2015, so it was, you know, like it's been around for this whole last 6+ you know, whatever years of just craziest politics and this, you know, pandemic and everything else. So I don't know who out there can't be a little pissed off or scared or
about something,
curious or whatever. It's such a precarious time in history, and it's like, I don't know how anybody can't be full of dread or paranoia. And I'm not the kind of person that like, oh, I got to put myself in a happy space. It's like, no, you, like, when you put yourself on the level of like something completely heavy and demoralizing and ripping your face off, it's kind of like it's a little more cathartic in a release way than like trying to cover it up, like with just some pop music or something that's gonna, you know, like, I'm not saying I don't like to listen to happy music ever or anything like that, but it's, you know, like, I don't do it to change my mood. It's like, no, when you're at the bottom, you listen to the darkest shit you got, you know, like it's like an embrace.
Well, we pull the dirt in on ourselves. I mean, it's human nature to say, I'm seeking what I feel. Right? I mean, this is why people get divorced all the time, because they come home, they're in a pissy mood, and they bring their shit home and they take it out on their wife, right? Because they want them to feel like they feel, because they've had a shitty day or whatever's going on. So we're always sort of seeking, which is weird, but human nature seems to seek the lowest common denominator, not the highest.
Yeah, and repetition also.
Yeah. What's
History
predictable
repeats itself over and over. Every time lifestyle repeats itself, everything is so repetitious, and you know, it's like trained animals in a circus act, really. You know.
Yeah. So I have to ask this question of you, David. Would you ever write a pop song?
Yeah, even if I didn't write it. I mean, there's some songs on some of these records that are just straight up weirdo. You know, that just like my friend would send me like a poppier beat or something. I'm like, all right, well, fine, let's go. I mean, I don't know that I could ever actually write, you know, it's an odd question. If someone came to me and goes, hey, here's a briefcase of money and you have to come up with 4 bars of something for a commercial, I think I could put my artistic whatever on hold long enough to come up with the jingle. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, but it's just not. It's like Max said. It's like I've never had an interest in anything mainstream. I don't fit into 90% of the musical conversations I get into with people unless they're also into extreme music and stuff. And even those people know more about pop music than I do. I didn't know who you know, Godsmack was until they were on the radio for like 12 years or something. Like I am just very, very detached from like arena rock and pop music and everything else. And I don't adhere to it. I don't know. It doesn't flow, you know, like,
yeah, I don't think you're laying at home making love to Whitesnake.
I like everybody's first record. And after that, it's like, get out of here.
Mac, what are you seeking still? I mean, you've done kind of everything. Is there still a style of music you would love to, be asked to be a part of?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Definitely multicultural music. That's there's several things going on right now that I'm involved in. It's between African rhythms, Brazilian, a band from Panama, Colombia, all different types of music from South America, and taking it in a more interesting direction than what's been previously taken. Right now, it's quite a bit stale, that whole scene too, just like a lot of scenes are. But there's so much potential in the Caribbean sound, the Afro-Cuban sound, various styles of music like that can be crossed and cross-genred, and can be made some real music out of it, like something really special, something really different. There's been a lot of stale periods here in the past 10 years with the music, and there's more and more recordings. More and more people have access to getting their recordings out, but that doesn't mean that any consistent level of anything new or exciting or that interesting. And some things have been made like that, but you don't hear all of them, and they don't have a cohesive point. A lot of people are making very eclectic records. They're allowed to make it. A record company not standing over them saying, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. They're very eclectic things, but they come out not having a point of view. And I think that's a really important thing, to really come through with a strong point of view. And I think we achieved that with this record. That's one of the reasons I'm really proud of this. It definitely has a real point of view, no matter how fucked up it might be, or whatever it is, or what people think it might be, or what their expectations of what it might be, or isn't, or is, or should be, or could be. It definitely has a perspective, and that's a real goal that we achieved there. So I think the body of work going forward has to have a perspective, in my point of view. Yeah,
I love that you said that. There's a band that I've recently discovered that both of you, I would love to have you check out, just because I would love to hear your opinion one of these days. They're called Mobius. They're from Lyon, France. Mm-hmm. And the band is all from Reunion Island, except for their singer. So they have these really tribal, really eclectic, right? All these instruments you've never heard of. So, like way deeper than a didgeridoo, right? I mean, just it's really, really eccentric stuff. And I really like it. So I guess I'm in the active pursuit of finding things that where people are willing to take risks and introduce us to something that's thousands of years old, but we don't hear it because it doesn't have big tits and ass shaking on a screen. It's not ugly and dirty. I had a guide say to me the other day, do you think we're going to be listening to, Cardi B in 10 years? And I'm like, I hope not, man. I hope not. And no offense to Cardi B, but God.
Well, my point is, everything has become so generic, so much the same, so androgynous, just there's no personality, and 10 records in a row are going to sound just alike.
Here in the hip hop world these days, it's like unreal. Like my favorite stuff is like the 90s, Queensbridge, gangster rap stuff and everything else. And it's like, the good street stuff, and it's like you hear these kids today, everybody's got a gun, everybody's got a face tattoo, and everybody's got a sneaker, everybody's got all, but it's like, it's just, most of it's just crap. And it's, you know what I mean? That's not like, I guess that goes for anything. I guess all this pop music, everything else, everything's auto-tuned, everything's just, I don't know. It doesn't really feel like anybody sat down and went like, hey, let's get together and write a song, guys. It feels processed. It feels, I don't know. I don't know. It feels like a way of living for people, a way of like trying to make incomes. Like if I get all the right tattoos and the right endorsements before I'm 18, I'm set for life. And it's like, I don't know, man. Where's the fun in that? Don't you get sick of buying Ferraris by the time you're 22 or something? Maybe I'm jealous,
The lyrics are not really challenges like, okay, I know you're slime because you show your ass on FaceTime, I mean, something you could come up in a sentence and it's just thrown out there like with no edit, no nothing.
I think you're just testing material. You have another record going on the side, don't you? You're just testing material out here.
I knew you're slime. You showed your ass on FaceTime. That's right.
Oh my God, that's good. I don't even know if I can continue forward after that, Mac. You got it. You killed it.
Well, look, maybe we got the next one right there.
Yeah. So the album came out in May, right? May 21st ish.
Yeah.
Right. Right. What's the public reaction? I mean, the critical reaction has been good. I mean, are people hearing it? I know it's hard when it's esoteric, you know. It's
you know, like I run the GridFailure stuff through our Earsplit channels and everything else, but I can't really I can't in good faith with myself and my clients put like myself first or whatever. All the clients, they have to come first, everything else. So it's kind of like more like after hours or just kind of just in between things or whatever when I can send it out. We do follow up with some people, and there are some journalists and some mags that have been very supportive, and some people cover every record and just kind of keep it going and things like that. But it's rough. Like I really don't expect much. The other day we got a review on Pop Matters that I was not expecting, and it was incredible. And then there was, you know, there was one on 9 Circles that I wasn't expecting as well, and like that again was incredible. And it wasn't like, this is the best record of the year, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard. Everybody was like, we've done weird, but we've got something else for you. Like, you haven't heard this shit yet. Like, everybody had these bewildered whatever. So that's what I look for, like to get to the end of something and be like, wow, somebody made it to the end of the record and wrote about every song. Like, that's like, I want to come over and give you like an edible arrangement or something. Like, it's I'm so thankful with anything. People can be like, you know, I've seen better roadkill than this shit. Get out of here. And I'll be like, thanks for checking it out. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be offended if people don't like it, but damn, it's great to hear when people actually, you know, do get something out of it, because it's just definitely so far off the beaten path that it's just, and that's usually my favorite things, like the stuff that I listen to and don't really get the first time, by the third time might be my favorite record of the year. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and I mean, outside of like your favorite hardcore band and your favorite metal, and like, I mean, when you just come across something new and you're just like, what the hell is this? They have 13 records. I've never heard of them. And by the time you get through it, you're like, I don't even know what to call this. Like, that's the thing I'm going to put on top of the pile to come right back to. You know what I mean? Like, that's normally the stuff that, because it's more adventurous or something that way. It's like, of course it's great to pick it up and have your band come through with a good record, but when you expect it, you know what's going to happen. It's like, okay, cool. It's a good record, but it sounds like this band. It's like that only goes so far. It's like, you know, it's, I don't know. I like the adventure of it. It's, you know, there's just too much out there to ignore the stuff in the dark corners. You know what I mean? Like, that's where the gems really are, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting too that you said that, because I think it makes me actually think of Kurt Cobain when he first started writing. He didn't know who the Knack was. Yeah. And he didn't know who Cheap Trick was. Yeah. And he was telling Chris, the bass player, oh my God, I heard this great song by this band called The Knack. You know, 10 years later. And you know what I mean? I love the idea of being sort of lost in who you are, being true to yourself. And then every once in a while you get these cool discoveries. And it's kind of what I pride myself on with my show and the things that I'm doing in my life is I love being a tastemaker. I love the idea of introducing people to stuff that is new, but also to people like yourselves that have been around, that have done a lot of things, but the world misses them because they don't fit into the Cardi B slice. You know what I'm saying? Or the Linkin Park slice, right? So I'm just grateful that you guys have the balls to do what you're doing, and I love it. I love it.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah. We've already got ideas for another record coming together. We're hoping to record this summer and start something new. And I mean, I'm going to record a new EP for Mac, and he's got an LP coming out. And like, there's a lot of material in the works from both of us that'll be over the next, you know, year or two. That's separately and together. So it's you know, we've got a lot to. This one was just kind of the tester. Now it's like, now we got the formula, and now that we got vaccine, you know, the vaccine, and we can actually be in the room with people again and things like that. Now we don't have to do the remote thing anymore. Now we can get together and knock something out in a weekend or a week or a couple sessions or something like that. And so now we're really looking forward to like what we can do once we put it together with maybe a bit more intent up front, a bit more of a sketch idea, or a bit more of a lineup, or something else like what we could do. I can't wait to do it.
The process will certainly be faster. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so I have a few questions that are fun little questions to ask you before we end here. And I hope you don't mind, but they're sort of esoteric questions. Feel free to answer them how you want to answer them, okay? What do you wish you knew back then?
Don't follow a career in music. in trying to, I mean, if you can make it as a musician, great, but yeah, like what we do is I wouldn't, don't be a publicist.
Oh my God.
It's grueling, man. It really is. I mean, you look it up. It's statistically, it's one of the roughest jobs because you're kind of always living in the future and always under somebody else's foot and everything else. So I'm not saying I dislike our company or anything, but yeah, I should have been a dentist, like,
Sure. How about you, Mac? What do you wish you knew back then?
I would say the slogan: the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah. It kind of comes around, right? Like a racquetball.
Sure does. It's just different cast of characters, different exposure. Now there are cameras everywhere. Now there's sound bites everywhere. It's the same bag of tricks. You just know more about it now. It's more exposure.
Cool.
It's just more out front, and people just have more ignorance to put themselves out front to be seen doing stupid things,
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, the maturity of social media. Right.
right.
Okay, question number 2. If anything, what would you take back?
I don't know. Mac, what do you got?
I sometimes regret that I kicked a lot of ass on the way up, and I regret that I didn't kick more ass.
There you go. That's the kind of answer. I'm looking for.
That's it. I should have been quite a bit more. I would have been like a Caligula kind of motherfucker,
Yeah, I would go back to high school.
I'd want to make Caligula look like a choir boy.
Yeah. Yeah, if I knew what was coming in life, I'd go back to high school and do everything all over again, man. Wreck some ass. Like, good call, Mac.
All right.
That's fine. Are you going to be in agreement with him, David? Is that a good answer?
Yeah,
for you,
I second that. It's
okay.
Yeah,
okay. And then the weird, depressing question: what does death mean to your legacy?
What does death mean to my legacy? I don't know. I've got very little faith in anything, or I've got no spiritual beliefs or anything else. Death is not putting out any more records. Death is no more bills to pay. There's nothing. I have nothing very spiritual there for that one.
Sure. Oh, it doesn't have to be a religious question. It's just a curiosity. Does it end? You know what I mean? And do you go on? That kind of idea. You know what I mean?
hope not. I don't know. Definitely.
How about you, Mac?
Or if you come back as a horse, people are always like, I want to come back, be reincarnated as a horse. Like, that's cool. I'll do that. Like, I don't want to be this again, man.
Well, for me, I knew someone really well. It was actually a relative who made a pile of money, millions, and he wasn't sure which way to go, whether there was incarnation or whether it was like coming back to life or heaven or anything. So his philosophy was he gave 20 million to Jimmy Swaggart or one of those guys.
Oh, wow.
And then he buried another 20 million out in the field. So if he came back as a horse or a goat, he'd know where his money was. So the bottom line is, all you have is what you came here with. Nobody's going to stay famous for that long. Nobody's going to stay in the limelight that long. And people are forgotten relatively fast. So you just do the best you can with what you have while you're here.
Yeah. Oh man,
you may not come back as a horse.
Yeah.
Mac,
no, that's
do you know where that field is? Do you know where that field is?
I've been looking for it.
I've got a shovel.
I've been looking for it. Matter of fact, I looked in the attic where the guy used to live and everything to see if there's any buried satchels up there, but no.
Yeah, at least look for the map.
Right.
That is wild stuff. Well, look, I appreciate the time you guys gave me. I know it's much later there in New York, so my apologies for keeping you so late on a Friday night. But
day's over. I'm getting nowhere to go.
I feel like we're friends now. You know what I mean? Like, look. I know this is so uncool for me to do this, but I totally want to play on your record, and I got the chops for it. But I know you don't know that, but I
want to check it out. Yeah,
I would love to. I would actually, but you know, we can obviously take this off, you know, for later. But my point being is, you guys you're really incredible, and you've done something really special, and I get it. It's never going to be mainstream, and people aren't necessarily going to know about it unless somebody says, "Hey, you got it. At least check this out." Yeah. But I am the Jimmy Fallon of eccentric music. You know what I mean? Like I love you bring the crazier, the more obscure, the more obtuse, the more just name any word with the O in it, and I'm after it, right? You know, orgasmic, you know, and I just love it, and I couldn't wait to talk to you guys. So I really have nothing else to say, but thank you so much for making my night and making my musical ear happy, and being as rad and badass and human as you could be today. It's so cool. Thank you.
Well, it's been a great pleasure.
It means everything.
Really enjoyed it. It's really been great. Thank you very much.
Cool. Yeah, cool. It's been cool working with you with these other bands, everything else too. So I mean, I'll just keep. I want to keep. Now that I know, I'm going to feed you with some. There's some other stuff you haven't heard yet. I'll start sending a ton of music your way, man.
Cool.
You know, very, very thankful for this, for taking the time to do this, talk to us, and spend the time. And seriously, kudos on even getting away with play. I can't even play this shit at dinner. So good, you know, way to go on that.
When my wife hears this, she listens to all my shows. When my wife hears this, she's gonna go, "You did?" And I'm gonna be like, "Yeah, trust me, I did. You just."
I will confess, I did listen to it. I did listen to it on my cell phone when I was in line for White Castle.
Oh my God!
All right, that's what it's made for.
Yeah, right. The greasier, the better.